Hi, welcome back. As promised, this is my spoiler-filled review of the Fantastic Four First Steps, which I saw on Sunday. Right, so this time around, instead of trying to work through it, because I never kind of stick to my flow, I've written down a load of categories on bits of paper here, characters, effects, that kind of thing, and I'll address them one by one. So they'll be quite random. Look, I'm just trying to make it interesting for myself. First things first, did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. Was it the best film in the world? No, it wasn't. Was it as good as the previous Fantastic Four films? Well, anything is better than Fantastic, but I still have a huge soft spot for the charm and the characters of the Tim Story movies from 2005 and 2007, if I remember rightly. They were not perfect films by any stretch of the imagination. The tone was good, equally as good as this one. It's good to see the Fantastic Four in the MCU finally. But let's get into the categories, shall we? And let's sort it out. Anyway, so first bit of paper. Reed Richards. As I said on Sunday, he's not Reed Richards, he's Worried Richards, because Pedro Pascal, love him, he spends the entire movie looking doubtful and worried and not very confident, not very assertive. He is a genius, and you do see him working out lots of stuff on a chalkboard, etc. You see Pedro Pascal and you just see Pedro Pascal. I couldn't buy him as Reed Richards. Now, weirdly, compared to Ioan Gruffudd, good Welshman, Ioan Gruffudd, even though I knew of him before he was Reed Richards, he sold me the character of Reed Richards a lot better. I guess it helped because he had an American accent. As you know, Ioan Gruffudd is a Brit, a Welshman. So Pedro Pascal comes across as, you take Burt Reynolds and remove most of his testosterone. You know, I don't want to diss him too much because he's great in The Mandalorian when he turns up. But Pedro Pascal's bubble burst for me when I saw Wonder Woman 1984. Admittedly, he shaved his moustache off for that one, but not for this one, when it counted. But at the end of the day, his Maxwell Lord character in Wonder Woman 1984 was awful. And although he's a competent Reed Richards in this, he didn't sell it to me as much as the other three characters. Let's look for another one. I want to do the characters first, I think. The Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer, controversially, they decided to go with the Shalabal version, which is the female version of Silver Surfer. And everyone said, it's not a gender swap. Now, although the Shalabal character as the Surfer does exist in the comics and has existed for quite a while, I would still call it a gender swap because they gave her the backstory of Norrin Radd, which was the male Surfer we saw in the Tim Story movie. There was no mention of Norrin Radd. Weirdly, and notably, in Norrin Radd's story, he was in love, and in order to protect Shalabal, his wife or partner or whatever, and save his planet, he agreed to be the Galactus' herald. But in this version, she just said, there was no mention of Norrin, it was all about, I've got a kid, so she's a single mum, and I'm a scientist, and I want to save my planet. So they switched it up a little bit. But at the end of the day, the effects were good, and she was okay for what she was. She wasn't as imposing as Doug Jones in the costume, and her voice was just thin. It was a standard female voice. Could have been a CG character, but when you had Lawrence Fishburne, aka Morpheus, doing the voice of the Surfer, stern but calm, It's very, very good. I still think much better. Anyway, style, production design. As everyone knows, it's set in a different universe, which explains why there's no more superheroes in that film. And also, it looks like it's in the 60s or the 50s. It's a bit unclear because some scenes felt like 1940s New York, but there's some future technology, etc., and it's done really well. And the fact that they don't have to talk about Tony Stark or Thanos or the 5-year blip or Spider-Man or Doctor Strange or anything else or multiverse. It keeps it all contained, and you can just get on with the business of learning who the Fantastic Four are in the Marvel Universe. And they're in the universe called 828, which is a sneaky little homage to legendary comic artist Jack Kirby, who was born on the 28th of the 8th, 19-something, I'll put it there. So that was cool. And obviously, from the very start, that the Fantastic Four are about to move at some point into Earth 616, which is what we call the Earth we live in, the dimension we live in, where Tony Stark, Spider-Man, and everyone else is currently residing. Okay. I have put the spoiler warning up, so there are going to be spoilers. Franklin, baby Franklin. So the film opens up with Sue finding out that she's pregnant. Her very first scene, she's sitting on the toilet. Great. But, she is pregnant, and Reed is more concerned with, but we've got altered DNA. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? She's like, calm down. We're just going to have a kid. And Franklin is born, I would say, in the second act of the film. And I read a comment somewhere that someone said, once the baby's born, it's all about the baby. And it kind of is, because, here come spoilers, Galactus knows of the baby somehow, and he says the baby has within him the power cosmic, which is strong enough or powerful enough to stop Galactus's constant hunger, which is why he absorbs and eats planets. He says once he has this child, he can break free of his hunger and be normal again. Obviously, the Fantastic Four go up to meet with him and have a quick chat, and he tells them this, and they're like, there's no way you're having our baby. But then, like the geniuses they are, they come back to Earth and tell the human race, in order to stop the Earth being destroyed, he wants us to hand over the baby, so we're not doing that. So everyone's like, just hand over the baby. One life compared to billions, And they're like, no, we won't sacrifice the baby for the Earth, but we won't sacrifice the Earth for the baby, or something like that. And somehow the public buys that and goes, okay. Franklin is, I'm assuming, played by a baby in most scenes, but there are lots of scenes that look very CGI. It's not terrible. And here's one of the biggest spoilers, so honestly, I've warned you. There's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina. Sue Storm dies at the end, and the baby brings her back to life. Okay, so that's a huge spoiler. And you kind of expect it happening anyway. Here, talking of Sue, we have Sue. Vanessa Kirby, famously playing Sue Storm. She is the center of the film, but not in an overpowering kind of way. She gets told what to do as much as she tells other people what to do. There's no W word in this, as far as I can tell. There's nothing that felt over the top messagey. It was just good, solid entertainment. And it did feel like reading a comic, much like the Superman movie. And Vanessa Kirby is, she sells the emotion, she sells the caring, she sells the assertiveness. She's possibly the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, given what she does at the end of the film to push Galactus through the streets using just her force fields. She doesn't use invisibility very much in this film, considering she's called the Invisible Woman. She spends most of her time using force fields. There is some invisibility. There's a very cool scene where Reed is worrying about the baby. He's always worrying about something. And she lies down on a couch and makes her stomach invisible so they can see the baby inside, which is quite an interesting way of using it. And there's quite a cool, funny little bit when Ben's lying on his bed talking to Johnny, and they're talking about what to do, and all of a sudden Sue just appears like right next to him, and he's like, don't do that, Who else have we got here? Chemistry. Okay. Well, Reed's a scientist and he does chemistry. No. Reed and Sue, they do sell the fact that they're in love. The whole promotion trail for this film, Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby famously very touchy-feely with each other quite a lot. And I think, as far as I know, Vanessa Kirby's married, and it just comes across as like, guys, you don't have to sell it that much, okay? The film's made. It's called acting. You don't have to really, creep everyone out. But no, all the characters are, they do feel like a family. They do feel like good friends. It's on a par with the original, the Tim Story movies. You do buy that these people are friends and relatives. Ben Grimm is actually the outsider. He's a friend of Reed Richards. He's a friend of everyone else, but he's not related to the rest of the Richards and Storm lot. But everyone gets their sort of time with each other, and they all seem to get on quite well, which is quite good. Famously in the Fantastic hideous movie, Sue and Ben never got to speak, never got seen together, which was very strange. What have we got here? Oh yeah, see, there was two joined together. Ben Grimm, played by Ebon Moss-Bachrach. I've never seen him in anything else. He's obviously been in something quite popular, but I haven't seen it. He's good. He's very good. And obviously they got the look of the thing spot on, comic accurate. I think he could have been a little bit bigger. But then he'd have problems getting through doorways and things like that. And I really wanted the gruff, traditional gruff voice, which originally, first time we heard the thing speak was in the cartoon in the 60s. And he was voiced famously by the man whose name just popped out of my head. No, I can't remember the name of the guy. He played Lurch in the black and white Addams Family TV series. His name just went past my line of sight and disappeared again. It'll probably come to me before the end of the movie, but he originally did the voice of Lurch, of Ben Grimm, and he put that "it's clobbering time" kind of thing in. Michael Chiklis then did a great job of emulating that, and I miss it. That feels like the voice that he should have. You know, like if you hear Iron Man speak, it's instantly like, that's Robert Downey Jr., that's how he talks now. If you think of Batman, 99 people out of 100 will think Kevin Conroy. That's Batman's voice now. Apart from the people who will think Christian Bale or Adam West. But Ben Grimm could have done with that gruff voice. There was a scene near the end of the film where he was shouting at Johnny for something, and he kind of went gruff, and I went, that's the kind of voice he needs. Talking of Johnny, played by Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things. He's very good. He does get a task. He gets a good task where he's working out the language of the Silver Surfer. And he finally works it out all by himself kind of thing, and surprises everyone because he's not just a quote-unquote hothead. He's not a huge womanizer like Chris Evans was in the Tim Story movies. In fact, he's like kind of hoping to find someone, but doesn't really do it. Ben, famously, going back to Ben Grimm for a second, has a little bit of a moment with a red-headed girl. And when things look very desperate for the Earth, Ben goes to a Jewish synagogue or whatever, and she's there. Famously, or it's well known that Ben Grimm's character is Jewish, so that kind of makes sense. But no sign of Alicia, who was in the comics a blind sculptor. But Johnny, his effects are really good. You can see more of his face than in previous Human Torches, so you can make his expressions out and stuff. He jumps off things and bursts into flame and flies around. The effects are very similar, but he's never once said "flame on," which my friend Paul pointed out to me. And I was like, oh yeah, he should have said "flame on" at least once. That's one of the things you got to say, because he spent a lot of the film goading Ben Grimm into saying it's clobbering time, and Ben kept, no, I don't say that, I don't want to say that, it's just in the cartoon, I don't say that. And weirdly, Human Torch never said "flame on." Interesting. Who have we got next here? Johnny Storm. Well, I've just talked about Johnny. In the film, they're already 4 years into being the Fantastic Four, and they're world famous, and there aren't any other superheroes in that universe, so they're the only superheroes. There was a role by a character called Red Ghost, shown in the trailers, played by John Malkovich. Unfortunately, John Malkovich had his scene cut out. Now, they mention him, but they don't show him. And going back to Ben Grimm for a second, Ted Cassidy played Lurch. That's the name I couldn't remember like a fool. I don't know how it just came to me. Pacing. I said about this on Sunday. If you look at a film as 3 acts, beginning, middle, and end, beginning is nice and juicy and interesting and world building and setting things up. The middle, once the threat of Galactus is established, it does slow down a bit. I'm not saying I want MTV level editing that's all over the shop and really, really fast, but it was a bit draggy. And by the time we get to the end, it's fine. And a lot of films now are doing this thing where I think it's still an echo from the backlash of Man of Steel, where people complained about buildings getting knocked over, might have had hundreds of thousands of people in there. They found a way of clearing the city instantly. So that was a throwback to another Marvel character, the Mole Man, who they brought in to do the right thing for once in his life and give everyone a place of refuge and sanctuary under the Earth's surface in his land called Subterranea. So very convenient. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. Effects were all very good. They managed to sell Galactus being very tall and very imposing. He was like a human spaceship. It was like Independence Day, As I said in Sunday's thing, the actor playing Galactus is Ralph Ineson, who was in Game of Thrones and Chernobyl, and he's a northerner. He's from Leeds, but he's got a very low voice. But then again, you could have done that with the pitch shifter. He actually wore a practical costume. I found this photo, and it's awesome because you can see more of the suit, and it's very, very closely inspired by the Jack Kirby Galactus costume, which is good. And Galactus will be back. What have we got here? Post credits. There are 2 post credits scenes. Here come more spoilers. The first one, mid credits, is awesome because Sue goes into the living room, and she turns. Hang on, is this the? I'm thinking of probably a different scene. But anyway, what happens is Sue discovers Franklin sitting on the floor. He's about 4 years old, and kneeling in front of him is a hooded character in a green hood holding a silver mask. Obviously, this is Dr. Doom. I don't know whether it's Victor Von Doom. They haven't said yet that Robert Downey Jr. is playing the Victor Von Doom character. Just saying he's Dr. Doom. Now, whether this is another Tony Stark from another universe, or a Stark that went evil or whatever, or a clone or whatever, or maybe Robert Downey Jr., which I would like to see Robert Downey Jr. just playing a completely different character. Prosthetic him up because Dr. Doom's supposed to have a disfigured face, but play someone else. It doesn't have to be connected to Tony Stark all the time. Anyway, that's the first post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, which makes you go, Doom wants the baby. And then the end credit scene, the very post-credit scene, is a cartoon. It's the opening credits of a Fantastic Four cartoon, like you remember from the 60s, but they've tweaked it. They've added Pedro Pascal's likeness and everyone else's likeness to the original cartoon. Or they've just recreated the cartoon and made it look old-fashioned, but, Pedro Pascal with the moustache. It's fun, but it's not really worth waiting for, A couple more left. Tone of the film. Different from Superman. Less joyous. There's enough humor in there to keep you going, but it's not goofy or slapsticky, really. And as I say, it's quite a serious film. It feels like they're trying to hammer home the importance and the threat of Galactus coming to Earth and taking over everything. So that was really good. There is a jarring scene at the end where Ben and Johnny and Reed are trying to fit a baby chair into the Fantasticar, and they're all struggling and they don't know how to do it, and it goes on for far too long. It's funny, but after the 30 seconds, which that gag should be, it goes on for like another 30 seconds or another minute, and you're like, oh yeah, all right, we get it, you're incompetent at putting a baby seat in, all right. There's another scene in the edit that is a clear bad edit. Johnny Storm is talking about how he's worked out the language of the Silver Surfer, and he's standing a good 20 feet away from the rest, so he's enunciating quite loudly. And then they cut to Reed or Sue, then they cut back to him and he's talking really quietly, and then they cut to Reed or Sue and they cut back again and he's shouting loudly again. So it sticks out like a sore thumb because he's changed his tone to quiet and then back to loud again. It's, yeah, maybe go like that. Keep that one till last. Loves and hates. Love the look of the thing, love the costumes, love the Jack Kirby-esque production design, which they tried to do in Thor Ragnarok. There's a lot of Jack Kirby design in that. I love that they put the Mole Man in and the little Garganto, which is the creature coming out of the ground, which is from Jack Kirby's first Fantastic Four story. Lots of hints to things like that. What else did I love? Sue looked good. She looked... she didn't have to have a nosebleed every time she used her force fields like Jessica Alba did. Although Jessica Alba is hotter than the Human Torch, I always felt that Jessica Alba didn't really sell the blue-eyed blonde 60s style woman that Invisible Woman should have been. I always thought like someone like Charlize Theron at the time or Naomi Watts or someone would have made a good Sue Storm. Jessica Alba in a wig that changed over both movies wasn't really Sue Storm for me, but you know, she's definitely there to look amazing, and she's a good actress as well. But she doesn't seem quite right for the role of Sue Storm. Vanessa Kirby probably fit the role better, and she's a little bit older, and she feels more suited to the role. What else? Galactus, finally, like I said on the Sunday thing. There's a lot of people out there who go, well, at least he's not a cloud this time. Galactus was never the cloud. Galactus was inside the cloud, and in future films, he would have been revealed in his glory. But for this point, they wanted to make Galactus, for the Tim Story movie, they wanted to make Galactus threatening enough without showing a 500-foot tall man in a purple top hat and a skirt. All right, it's a choice. It's a choice. But Galactus was never the cloud. He was in the cloud. And you can see it in, if you look at my Sunday video, you'll see some screenshots of Galactus's helmet shown in the cloud. Anyway, Galactus was really good. He just said enough. His eyes flashed like he did in the comics, and he was great. What have we got here? Galactus. Well, I've just talked about Galactus. Really liked it. What did I hate about the film? Slow middle section. A lot of people were saying that there weren't enough characters in there. It was focusing mainly on the Fantastic Four, but I didn't mind that at all, because I think for a new setup of 4 characters, that's enough to focus on, and it gives you a sense of their importance, because they're the only superheroes in that universe. So, you know, their stresses and they've got to deal with the press and the publicity and the man on the street, etc. And it shows their stuff. Ben Grimm wasn't as much of a tragic figure as he is in the comics and in the Tim Story movies. Everyone seems to love him. He's not that concerned about restoring his looks back to human. He just says to Reed at some point, hey, don't worry about it, you know, forget about it. It is what it is. And I think Ben works good as a slightly tragic character, which Michael Chiklis, you know, did amazingly well. Final scores, as I said on Sunday, I'm scoring the Fantastic Four First Steps 7.5 out of 10, which is promising, worth a watch. I may go watch it a second time. I gave Superman, I think, a 6. And I'm slightly biased because I've always been more of a Marvelite than a DC Comics fan. Make mine Marvel, as they say. What can you do? I really wish there was a way of having Stan Lee in there, even if it was a poster on the wall. Someone said that there was 2 guys in a scene. Someone commented to me that there were 2 guys in there in a place called Timely Comics, which was what Marvel used to be called before it was changed its name to Marvel. And one of them was supposed to be Jack Kirby, and the other one was supposed to be Stan Lee, which I didn't see, but I'll keep an eye out for that. But I thought there were so many clips of the crowd waving and saying, yay, Fantastic Four. You know, couldn't they have done something like, I don't know, grabbed a piece of convention footage of Stan Lee on the screen or cut him out or something? I'm not saying do a CGI one or prosthetic someone up, But there's got to be a line of dialogue where you hear Stanley going, "I love the Fantastic Four." In fact, near the start, there was TV and radio playing as the camera was going through the streets, and I heard a voice on over the soundtrack saying something about Times Square, and it did sound like Stanley. So maybe that was it. I don't know. We'll know more as the days progress. Anyway, this is a long video. I've been as fast as I can, as concise as I can. You know I talk a lot. But before you go, if you've reached this far, I would just like to thank you and anybody else who recently subscribed. I've never had this many subscribers. Well, I have had this many subscribers in the past when I was doing mostly Jack Sparrow videos, and as soon as I left, everyone left the sinking ship. But now it's actually growing a little bit, and this is new to me. And if I can get to 1,000 subscribers, I'd be extremely chuffed. I don't know when it's going to happen or even if it's going to happen, but I thank you for joining me. And if you haven't yet subscribed, because a lot of people do come back to watch without subscribing, you don't have to watch my videos every week, but hit the subscribe button, give me a like or a thumbs up, and feel free to leave a comment as long as it's reasonably human and decent underneath. This is not a place for flame wars and hatred or petty insults or anything silly like that. Go take it, somewhere else. But generally, stick around. We've got lots of different things happening. I am a self-proclaimed aging geek with a number of different interests, and hopefully some of my videos will appeal to you. And I'll always try and keep on top of some of the movies and stuff that excite me. So with that said, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, most likely with some more news on the Blake 7 Federation Blaster props that I'm making. They're very close to being finished now. And I will see you in the next video. Take care now. Bye bye then.